Week 10 is here, and we are going to break it down from a DFS perspective, starting with the Block Party Show with JMToWin from 1 week season, giving you the best plays at each position and talking about the best game environments. We'll also wrap up with a lineup build with JM's favorite building blocks. Then we'll bring on Youdacao, fresh off of his $1 million win, to talk about the slate and the angles he's seeing. And then immediately following this show, we'll hop over with the Badge Bros, John and Nez, and we'll do a full Underdog Week 10 DFS preview. I'm Pete Overzet. Let's lock in here for the next 3.5 hours and roll.
Peter's one of the greatest depositors I've ever seen.
Trust the process. Let's go.
I got auto match with Levitan. Bullshit.
I just go the other way. In that 66, I win all the money. All the money.
If I had 150 lineups, I'd win too.
AP, crack spot bullets in your head like KD. Bust it, bitch, go bust it. And I had 10 pints with me in Russia.
Hey everyone.
All right. Hey, everyone. Indeed, I got my cozy sweatshirt on. JM's got his beanie on. We are officially entering the cold months here, JM, but hopefully we keep those snowflakes out of our lineups.
There we go. Hey, that was pretty smooth. That was professional. I was going to say, hopefully we stay hot with our builds, but yeah, you.
Oh, did you just freeze on me? Oh, no. JM, right before we went live, JM's video feed was cutting on me a little bit. So hopefully we can get him squared away until we get unfreeze.
That's why you're pro.
Okay, you are still a little frozen for me, JM. Can you hear me? Oh, now you're back.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Test. You got me?
Yes, I got you. I got you now. For a second, you were just frozen, smiling.
Hey, talk for a moment. I'm gonna go check something real quickly.
Okay, I can vamp here. What's up to everybody in the chat? We got Frankie, we got Steven, we got Thomas, Zelon. Yes, he's always just smiling here. Welcome TGH 300, becoming a YouTube member. As always, we have 2 additional shows just for YouTube members on the channel. This weekend, we have After Dark on Saturday night. We're going to have Joe Holka joining me for that. And then we will have the Week 10 DFS Cram on Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. It looks like you're back, though, and ready to rock here, Jam.
I'm back. Whatever I just checked wasn't messed up. So
okay.
Hopefully we're good. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, we will press on here. As always, we can do a little look back. It always messes with my brain because I'm like, I can't even remember what won tournaments last week. But how was your week 9?
Week 9 was good. It was, it stayed hot. Had a 9th and 17th place in the face mask. So it's one of those where it's 555 3 max. I've had a 2nd, a 6th, a 9th, a 17th in that. Usually my game changer roster is chosen from that pool, and I keep missing on getting the right one in the game changer. So it's been a weird season where it's been like my most consistent season probably ever, but no huge hits, but a lot of close calls. So yeah, keep knocking on the door and profit's profit, but hopefully we bang down the door on one of these big ones.
It all just came back to me because I remember, so I went in to tweak the lineup we built on Friday because whatever lineup we build, I always toss that.
Yeah, what was that one?
It was, so we did a Joe Flacco to Jamar Chase with Swift. But what I did is when Swift got ruled out, I was like, we're going to play Monangai. And then I had some extra salary. And I forget the wide, I think it was Brian Thomas. And I just moved him up to T. Higgins. And I was like, I'll just play the double stack with that. So that was one of my better lineups on the week, was just the one we built on Friday and then adjusting for some of that news. So that Flacco stuff, I was spooked like early in the week with his shoulder stuff. But man, he balled out.
Well, that was my, now you bring it up. That was my, Flacco was my best roster. I kept hearing your voice when we built saying, you don't really need T. Higgins because the thesis isn't, and every time he scored a touchdown, I was like what you said was right, but it was like, I should have rolled out one of those doubles. But actually, I was going to go like 50% Flacco, and then the persistent talk about the shoulder, and it was like,
I know.
I don't know. So I ended up going 20% Flacco was what happened. And had some other good builds as well. But yeah, that was the one to build with. And we roll forward to another week. I mean, like I said, it's been scorching hot this year. So just waiting for one of these where everything falls in place. Maybe this is the week where it happens.
Yeah, I've been in a similar boat, mainly more on Underdog, where I have more volume, where it's like, every week you look and it's the classic line for the intro where it's like, if I just go the other way and that 1v1, these 1v1s, but that is so much of it. You can play really sharp, but if you don't get the exact combos right, if you don't get Drake London paired with Brock Bowers or whatever those 30-point combos end up being, you're not going to get first place. And so you just got to stay in the game, and then hopefully those combos actually fall in your favor at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make money. It's hard to finish in the money in tournaments. So even though that's not the goal, if we can look at it and say, well, we finished in the money and we just needed this little thing to go right, or we had this roster over here, or this little change, like that's what we're really trying to assess is percentage-wise, how close are we to having a big weekend? And so if we keep having those where we're percentage-wise really close, then those are going to fall in our favor over time.
All right. We are going to do a little slate overview here. From a game perspective, like game total perspective, it appears to be like a pretty good slate, but then once you start digging into the position, specifically the running back position, just not maybe quite as strong as we've had in previous weeks. And we've also been spoiled with some value in previous weeks. So we'll discuss through all those angles, but JM, the high total games, Bills, Dolphins, 50 points. That's, being driven almost solely by the Bills 30-point team total. You got Ravens, Vikings, 49. You got New England, Tampa, kind of an interesting game, 48.5. And then you got the Rams and 49ers, 49.5. And then Lions, Commanders, 49.5, even with Marcus Mariota at the helm. How are you feeling about these overall game environments?
Yeah, last night in my journal, I broke down, talking recently about, especially in smaller field contests, the more we can attack confidence, the more money we're going to make over time, where we kind of force other people to beat our rosters. And we say, you guys go out there and make mistakes. We're just going to lean into our highest confidence plays. And so last night in my journal, I was sorting through where our highest confidence game environments are, or our highest confidence spots toward wacky scoring. And so the two game environments that stand out to me the most as the highest probability to have that wacky scoring, both teams scoring over 30. And both of these games have a lot of dents in them, but it's the Giants and Bears game, and it's the Ravens and Vikings game. But then the spot that has the highest probability of wacky scoring to me is the Lions offense, because we know this team well enough to know how they're likely to respond coming off of a really tough physical loss to a division opponent. And now going to play the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, this very much lines up similar to what we talked about their week heading into Chicago, where it's like, if the Lions are going to keep their foot on the gas in a game and try to send a message, this is the type of spot where they would be likely to do that. So that game against Chicago, it was about sending a message to Ben Johnson and the Bears about like supremacy in the division. But this one I see more as like sending a message to the league of like, yeah, we lost that game last week, but we're still the Lions. We're going to come out here and dominate this game. And so, I see the Lions as a really great spot for wacky scoring. And then those other two game environments as ones where, again, there's rooms to the downside. There's room to the downside on everything. The Lions is the highest probability spot on the whole slate in terms of one team scoring 30-plus points. But there are some interesting pathways for these other two games to take off in that direction as well.
Yeah, one other little narrative you can layer on to this spot for the Lions. I mean, they got embarrassed by the Commanders in that divisional round game last year when they were the favorite. So I know that one is in the back of their head as well heading into this week.
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic type of Dan Campbell, keep the foot on the gas, squeeze the life out of them type of game environment here.
What you didn't mention the Bucks and Patriots. I'm sure we'll get into individual plays from that game, but is there something about how those two offenses or defenses line up that isn't as enticing to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's sort of the next tier down for me. So if I divided things into 5 tiers, obviously the lowest tier is like the Jets game, the Jets and Browns game, the Houston Jags game, like those games where it's going to be very difficult for scoring to take off. And then there's second tier. And then in this third tier, I've got this Patriots and Bucks game. And basically it's this game, 49ers and Rams, same thing, where it's the chances of it taking off aren't as high as people are going to want it to be. The Patriots have allowed only the Dolphins in Miami with Tyreek Hill, with no Christian Gonzalez. It's the only team that's topped 23 points against the Patriots. Now, we saw the Bucks do it against Seattle, right? So the Bucks can do it against anybody. But then the Bucks also typically don't allow a ton of scoring. And so, yeah, I think this is likely to be one of these 26-23 games or 27-24, something in that range, than to be a game where each team is scoring 30 plus. But I do think that it's a game that's, it's in the top 5 of the game environments on the slate. I just think that it's less likely to take off than people are going to want it to be. We look at both these great run defenses and it's like, oh, there's going to be a lot of passing in this game. And so we'll probably see scoring take off, but realistically, we probably won't. It's just that is within the range of outcomes here. And so it's something we want to be thinking about. On top of that, I mean, like Drake May still probably going to get his 24 to 27 DraftKings points, right? And somebody on the Bucks is probably going to do well in this spot because of passing volume. So I think that there's certainly fantasy goodness in this game, but it's a game I'm less excited about stacking up and just assuming we get a shootout in this spot.
It's also hard to stack up, right? It's like you kind of like the quarterbacks, you like Igbuka, maybe a little love for the tight ends, but the running backs are in tough spots. So it is hard to kind of access that game in a clean way. Let's head over, though, and talk quarterbacks. And, as I take my first glance at ownership projections for the week, it seems like the rare week where the two most expensive quarterbacks in Lamar and in Josh Allen are also going to be perhaps the most popular plays as well. So do you have a favorite of the Lamar and Allen duo?
Yeah, it's definitely Lamar for me. There's a couple factors at play here. One, Josh Allen, we've been on this since his rookie year when he put up 41 against the Dolphins in his last game of the season. And nobody was rostering him at that point. He was 5,300, 5,600, whatever he was at that point. But Josh Allen has owned Miami in his career. But A, we know how this team calls their games, right? They're not leaning on Josh Allen unless they have to. And B, his games have been much higher scoring in terms of fantasy in Buffalo compared to in Miami. Makes a lot of sense because of the heat and humidity. Last I looked, 84 degrees, 74% humidity. In Miami, it's just a tough place for a team from Buffalo to go down and play. So we've had a lot of 24, 27 pointers from Josh Allen down there, but not the blow-up games that you're looking for. So then Lamar, you have a competitive game environment, you have an aggressive defense, and then on top of that, who do you stack Josh Allen with? Well, that's a little bit harder to piece together. Who do you stack Lamar Jackson with? And I know, again, nobody likes it. It's never sexy, but go back 17 regular season games. 17, that's a full season. 12 out of 17 games against all opponents, Lamar Jackson plus Mark Andrews has gone for 38 plus DraftKings points, and they're 10.2K in salary. So basically keeping you on a 200-point pace. And we're at this point in the season where you have running backs. We have Jonathan Taylor priced at 9,800. We have CMC priced at 9K. We can start to get a sense of what we're looking for in game logs from players priced in that range. I got some pushback this week in my DMs when I laid out this block, and somebody was like, quarterback scoring, their average points per dollar is higher than other positions. So you can't put these blocks in the same category as other blocks. Because I was kind of laying it out like, look at these game logs. Try to think about a running back priced at 10.2K. Would you be happy with these, right? There's like a 20-pointer in there, a 28-pointer in there. Everything else is like 38 to 54 between Lamar and Mark Andrews. And what I pointed out, kind of responded to this person and said, well, if you actually take quarterback plus any one pass catcher and just isolate, Drake May plus this pass catcher or Jared Goff plus this pass catcher, take that price tag and match it up against other players priced there or players theoretical, we get up to 13K, 14, 15K, theoretical players, the game logs you would expect to see there. They all look the same as individual position players that you would have for that price tag because of the inconsistency of the quarterback hitting on the same week that this pass catcher hits and like how that all shakes out. So in these spots where we see quarterback plus one individual pass catcher hitting at a really high rate, we should take that as seriously as we would one player hitting at a really high rate, even though the salary multipliers at quarterback are typically a little bit higher. And so Lamar Jackson plus Mark Andrews, 10.2K, to me, it's like, well, that's a really straightforward way to play. And then we also say, he's 6.8K, kind of squeezes down the salary a little bit, but as soon as you add Mark Andrews in there, it doesn't. Right now, we still have the salary flexibility that we want. Same price basically as Jacoby Brissett plus Trey McBride, which is 10.6K, and that's gone for 41 to 50 in all three games that Brissett's been starting. But if we look at, the Seahawks have allowed more than 20 points once all season. That was to the Buccaneers, and so if we look at that and we're like, are we as likely to get the big game trusting Brissett against a good defense on the road compared to trusting Lamar against a good but inconsistent defense on the road or good but aggressive defense that gives up some big plays? I like this Lamar Mark Andrews side here and definitely like it more than the Josh Allen side because you get that math in your favor of getting two spots right, lowering the salary that you're spending. So, I think that Lamar is one of these, like, I always try to think who are the guys you got to beat. I think that Lamar plus Mark Andrews is one of the stacks that you have to beat this week. I don't think it's high probability to be the highest scoring stack. It's one of those where it's like you play it, you build a great roster around it. You probably got a good shot at finishing the top 5% of tournaments and can win smaller field tournaments. I think that there will be some stacks that outperform it, but that's certainly one of the ones to beat this week and one of the ones I'm going to be thinking about in terms of like, hey, let me just lock in some points on this roster and then get upside at other spots and try to let other people come beat me.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense there. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other Ravens pieces, I'm sure, as we go position by position. Why don't we flip the board here and go down to some of the values that people might be tempted by this week? I'll toss out a few names. JJ McCarthy, 4,900, Mac Jones, 5K, Mariota, 5,300. You mentioned Jacoby Brissett. We'll toss him in there as well, 4,600. Any of those cheapies stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Brissett stands out to me the most because you know who you're stacking them with. You know how they succeed. So you're getting 2 spots right. Again, average cost of 5.3K per player, keeping you on a 200-plus point pace, 250 point pace across all 3 of their games. Mac Jones, this one against the Rams is weird, right? Because Shanahan against McVay is just always weird. The 49ers have topped 26 points only once all season. I believe the Rams have only allowed one team to score more than 23. But, San Francisco put up 26 against the Rams, but that's unusual. We shouldn't expect that, and yet we know it's within the range of outcomes of Shanahan against McVay here. So, 2 coaches that know each other really well. Shanahan's generally had the upper hand on McVay, except for that one playoff matchup that sent the Rams to the Super Bowl. So, I think that this is a spot where you can kind of throw out the data and the numbers and say, yeah, Mac Jones is viable. I don't think I'm going to get to Mariota against Detroit. And I'm certainly fine with anybody going there. It's just who do you stack him with? What's the raw upside? It's hard for me to see him putting up the 25, 28 point game. And if you don't have a clear stacking partner, then it's harder to get there. I think maybe in large field play, I could consider it. And then JJ McCarthy, man, he actually did some really impressive things the other night. It's funny the discourse around him, right? He missed all of last year. And then it's well, clearly he's their guy. And then he has 7 bad quarters. And it's talking about how bad JJ McCarthy is and what a mistake the Vikings made. And he comes out and he looked really good in that game, but also they continue to kind of limit his passing attempts. And so I think they're going to try to do that here and not unleash him. So harder for him to have that high end outcome, but I do think that he's viable, right? We've seen his fantasy scores look good, but boosted by rushing touchdowns, which is probably not something we want to rely on from him. But again, they're going to get close to the end zone a few times, and if it's not a rushing touchdown, then maybe he's throwing that touchdown. So I think he's viable. He's not really in my pool, but he's a guy that I've been messing around with this week and certainly don't mind somebody going that direction this week.
Yeah, obviously can save a decent amount going down to some of those guys. You kind of already shared a little bit of your thoughts on May and Baker in that game. I know some quarterback we're going to dive into in further detail when we build some blocks. So I'm going to try to find a couple other names who might be interesting this week. Thoughts on Stafford? Talk about a guy who who to pair him with. I mean, probably the cleanest stacking partners in the league. Pretty good spot here. Nice game total. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, you're spending $15K between Stafford and Puka. It's 15.2K. So you're hoping for 60 points, which is obviously a stretch. And so then instead you have to kind of scale down and be like, well, if I get 48 points, 50 points from these 2 guys, that's still really solid points that you're getting, even though you're kind of overpaying for it. And then you got to say, okay, are there some salary savers that can go 5X, 6X and really kind of boost up my score in that way? But yeah, I think that Stafford is very attractive. There's this kind of theory out there that the Rams are basically trying to get Stafford the MVP this year. Obviously, they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year, but it's like, man, Stafford's been kind of disrespected his whole career. You hear all these young guys, CJ Stroud, another young quarterbacks. It's who's the quarterback you grew up watching? There's 5 or 6 of them. They're like Matthew Stafford. He was the guy for young guys who are in the league now because he did all this cool no-look stuff before Patrick Mahomes was in the league. Just nobody was watching him because he was with Detroit, right? And so it's Stafford's reputation doesn't match the way that the league sees him. They're throwing the ball close to the end zone. Obviously, they also have Devontae Adams now, right? But analytically, it's easier to score on the ground than through the air when you get in the tight red zone area. And yet the Rams, and in the past, the Rams have leaned into that. Now the Rams are throwing a ton in the red zone. Again, they have Devontae Adams. So that's part of the reason why. But it does seem like they're just saying, hey, let's keep throwing touchdowns with Stafford and juicing up these stats. So, yeah, I think that Stafford is very viable here in a game that should be competitive. We like competitive games because that gives that opportunity for that forward-leaning posture from the offense. And so Stafford's I've got 7 quarterbacks on my list out of 20 on the slate, and Stafford's sort of at the edge of that pool, right? He's number 6, number 7 at the edge of that pool. Drake May is in that 6-7 sort of range. And so, yeah, both these guys are in my thoughts. I don't know that I'll actually get there on tighter builds, but they're certainly within range for me in this pool of quarterbacks that I'm thinking could win us the slate this weekend.
The other game that you mentioned having kind of the potential to get nutty is this Chicago Giants game. And I think anyone who watched Chicago play last week can quickly see how things get nutty with their games. Thoughts on Caleb Williams and Jackson Dart, and if you were playing this game, kind of your preferred way to do so?
I mean, yeah, that's where it gets weird, right? You can look at the game and there's 2 sides to it, right? The Bears have topped 26 points twice this year, and it was against Dallas and Cincinnati. Now the Giants have given up 32 plus in 3 consecutive games. But they've also held the Eagles to 17. They've held the Chargers to 18. They've held the Chiefs to 22. Like sometimes this defense shows up, right? Flott should be coming back this week, which will help their secondary. And so, yeah, it's a weird situation where it's like you look at it and the way that Jackson Dart plays, the way that Ben Johnson calls his offense, the way that Caleb Williams plays, there's so much room to the upside, but it's a highly volatile like space to the upside where it could also be a 23-17 type of game. And then on top of that, who do you stack these guys with? You know that the Bears have been leaning into the run game. You know that it's hard to feel comfortable with Jackson Dart and a stacking partner. He's doing his own. So that's where it kind of breaks down a little bit for me. But because of the upside here, that was like last week, I didn't end up on any of my rosters. He was in my pool of like 5-6 quarterbacks, and I ended up cutting him out. And it's because it's like, well, who do you stack him with? Of course, if I'd played him, I probably would have stacked him with Rome Odunze, taken a 0. So we always think about that, right? It's not just you have a good game. It's who are you stacking with? You're stacking with Justin Jefferson, and now the price is very different. You're paying almost $13K, and are they hitting for that price tag, right? You're playing Caleb. Oh, I didn't play Caleb. I missed out on the 38-pointer, but I didn't play Caleb plus Odunze, so I missed out on the 38-pointer from that stack. It's harder when you think, who do you pair Caleb with? What I kept messing around with last week was, do you just play Caleb and Manungai? You know, like that would have probably been, that was the best way to go, but that was like the other way that I was thinking about playing it. So I do think that there's room to say Caleb Williams plus Swift, or you could say, Rome Odunze, if it's a shootout. Ben Johnson's going to be like, hey, let's swing the targets over to Odunze. We're going to get back to those 7-8 targets. Do we get up 9, 10? Does he have the big game? I don't know. But yeah, there's a few ways to stack that one. The Dart side, I mean, come on. Are we really playing Wan'Dale Robinson at high ownership? That's always a tough one because he can hit for big plays, but usually he's going to be used in the short area of the field. But then Slayton's not really being used enough to feel confident there. So, yeah, it does get difficult when you get down to the stacking level on this game environment. But we also got to think, like, if this game is a 35-31 game, something in that range, and it's the only game like that, it might still be where you need it to go. So there's a lot of questions around this one that I'm playing around with. And keeping both these guys in the mix this week is just a question of, like, how much does the math turn in your favor when you get to actually stacking these guys?
Yep. Yeah, that is the hard thing where when the two most attractive plays are the quarterbacks and you're like, okay, I can only play one of them and then I don't know who to stack them with. It gets tricky as well. We did get some news from Ben Johnson, or I don't know about news, but some coach speak on the running back stuff, basically relayed that it's going to be a hot hand situation. So maybe we can discuss that in more detail. I guess one other quarterback I would want to ask you about, just because he's been playing out of his mind. They trade for Rashid Shaheed at the deadline. He's coming off of a 31-point game against Washington the other night. Thoughts on Sam Darnold here at 5,800?
Yeah. Do people don't realize, I think, how good Arizona is, maybe. I saw this stat from Lord Reeves this week. Seattle's the only team that has led for more minutes this season than the Cardinals. Like,
wow.
They've got 1 and 3 and 4-point losses to the Packers, to the 49ers, to the Seahawks, to the Colts. And all of those were like blown games at the end. I think because of their loss to Tennessee, like it's skewed perspective around them. If they'd won that game and they're 4-5 and they've got all these close losses, I think that the narrative around them is a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, they're just a really, really difficult team to score points against. Now, at the same time, Max Melton is going to be out. Will Johnson's going to be out. That's a big dent in their secondary. So what they're going to, use the safeties to kind of keep things underneath. It's tough to say like what the ceiling is for the Seattle offense. This isn't an offense that I want to go out of my way to bet against, but this also isn't a spot where I feel like the field will be a little bit more confident in the upside on Sam Darnold than I'm going to be, because again, like we saw him do it against Washington, like teams do that against Washington. He's done it against Tampa Bay, right? That's impressive, but it just doesn't seem like a spot where we're as likely to see that. And I think we could see people chase that. So I want to give respect to this Arizona defense, to what Jonathan Gannon's doing there, and probably shy away from this one myself. JSN's still obviously in the mix for me, but I don't think I'm going to Darnold this week on tighter builds.
Yeah, and that's almost like the inverse of the Caleb and Dart stuff, where it's like if I can get most of the upside captured through JSN and not have to deal with the Darnold side in a tougher matchup, then it makes the full stack maybe not as attractive. And one of the few spots, right, where it's like there's a few of these wide receivers that you can play without the quarterback and feel pretty comfortable that they can get home without the quarterback being, a 30-point scorer.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I talk about a lot of, like I've talked about it with CeeDee Lamb and Dak in the past, of like you match up CeeDee Lamb's biggest games, they're almost always in games where Dak's going for 32 plus, 28 plus DraftKings points. And so if you're getting CeeDee Lamb right, you're almost certainly getting Dak right, and you should just turn that math in your favor by putting Dak on those CeeDee Lamb rosters. I kind of see McBride and Brissett that way this week. Like, how is McBride at 6K getting there without Brissett at 4,600 getting there? But because of how central JSN is to this offense, how high his target rate is, he can get there without a 5,800. With high price JSN can get there without a 5,800. Sam Darnold getting there. We've seen it over and over again this year, right? Where Darnold's putting up 20 DraftKings points or even below that, and JSN's putting up 25 plus DraftKings points. So, like you said, one of those rare spots where you can take the wide receiver and not feel like you're passing up good math by taking the quarterback with them.
Let's head over to the running back position. And I think from an ownership standpoint and a value standpoint, there's kind of three guys that are standing out right now. It's, of course, Christian McCaffrey. You got Devon Achane. And then you have Rico Dowdle, who we returned a full-blown bell cow Rico Dowdle after they abandoned the Chuba Hubbard experiment there for a couple of weeks. But assuming those three are the most popular plays on the slate, how do you like that trio?
Yeah, I mean, Dowdle is the top one to me because we've seen what he does when he gets the workload. It's funny, like Canales, he wasn't hiding this last week. He talked publicly about we're turning things over to Rico Dowdle, but there were so many good running back options, and Dowdle was playing Green Bay that it was like, okay, let's just kind of like the Jets. What are the Jets doing at quarterback? What's it going to look like with Adonai Mitchell? And it's like, well, it doesn't matter. They're playing the Browns this week. We can just gather facts on how they're deploying these guys and then use that information in a better matchup. That was kind of how I was looking at Dowdle, was like, okay, I trust Canales, but let's make sure. And they're playing Green Bay, so we're not missing out on anything big. And then he goes out there and crushes against Green Bay. So, I mean, Rico Dowdle, the only issue is like how banged up he was in that game. You watch that game and it was like constant grimacing and pain and grabbing his leg and coming over the sideline. So I see on the app that the Q tag is gone, which leads me to believe that he's practicing full. It says no injury designation, but he's still clearly banged up, right? So that's the only concern here. But he's going to get the workload, and it's a week where it's pretty thin at running back, as you alluded to earlier. So I don't mind going to Dowdle at heavy ownership in this spot, which I think will be the case, is the heavy ownership. The other guys, you mentioned Achane. Who was the other one that you mentioned?
CMC, Achane, and Dowdle, I think, are going to be the three most popular.
Yeah, I mean, CMC, it's the same thing where you look at the matchup and it's like, well, this is a stay away spot. But also CMC put up his third best game of the season in this spot without George Kittle, right? Where he's put up his two best games with Kittle on the field, helping with the blocking and all that. And so I think CMC, you just say like, yeah, I'm probably not getting 30 plus points from him this week. I might even only get 22, 23, 24, but that high end range is possible. And the 22 plus points is highly likely. So just don't overthink it, right? He's like 48% of their offense. I think he's got like 48% of their offensive touches on the year. So CMC is a guy that I'm comfortable saying I hate the matchup, but the game environment's above average and it's Christian McCaffrey, right? And so I think that he's a guy that you don't try to force, but if he works out, you play him. Achane is one of these where I think we're getting duped by like, I can't get all the way up to CMC and like, it's a good matchup against Buffalo and Achane's role is big. Across his last 18 games, he's topped, I think it's like 20, 21 DraftKings points 3 times. Like the ceiling hasn't been there. Then so what's tough about Achane is you kind of look at him, you're like, yeah, but he's probably putting up 16 to 20, 21 points. And then you're like, but he can put up 34. We see him do it sometimes. Like, and then running back's not super attractive. So every time I'm building practice builds this week, I come across Achane and it's like, yeah, running back's not super high confidence this week, so let me just throw Achane in. And I think that's where people are getting is like projections like him because the floor is high and the ceiling is there, but the chance of getting to the ceiling aren't that high. And so at high ownership, I'll probably mostly be off of Achane. But again, recognizing that he's one of the top 3, 4, 5 plays, he's just not nearly as good as ownership is going to indicate. And I think there's going to be better ways to play the slate than him. So I don't mind Achane. He's in my player grid, but I don't know that he's actually going to make the cut for my tighter pool this week.
Yeah, so it sounds like Dowdle, clearly kind of your favorite of those high-end ones. Like of this next tier, of guys you would have to spend up for, your Jahmyr Gibbs, your James Cook, Derrick Henry, Kyron's, who is that next guy that if you put Rico in that you'd want to slide this guy next to him?
Well, yeah, I know we're going to talk about wide receiver here in a minute, but I kind of want to talk macro if that's cool, because we talk on this show, right? We go position by position. We're talking players, but DFS isn't about picking good players. It's about how we're thinking about roster construction, right? And so I started the week seeing the same thing you're talking about, where it's like none of these running backs look that attractive. And yet, because there's no cheap running backs, we're still going to have the Rico Dowdle plus a mid-priced or high-priced guy. And then it's going to cut people off from the high-priced wide receivers. So I started thinking, man, what if we find a cheap running back and then we can pay up for one or two high-priced wide receivers? Well, then it was a day or two ago that I started looking at wide receiver, and it was like, aren't all these guys Christian McCaffrey this week as well, right? Like given the matchup, JSN and Puka are not going to be running free this week. They're going to have the volume. They're going to have the floor. They're both these guys who they're probably going to have like 90 yards in the fourth quarter. And then if you get the run out, they get up to 110, 120, 130, something like that. You're hoping for the touchdown. You get the 27, 29 point score instead of the 22 point score, right? Both those guys kind of look like that. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be running free, but then it's like, well, is there enough volume for him against Washington? That's the big question mark there. Does he get to just 20 points, 22 points, and he doesn't get that monster game? And then Devontae Adams, he's leading the NFL in end zone targets. They'll miss 2 times and go to him a third time, all on one drive. Like their whole offense in the red zone is just get the ball to Devontae Adams in the end zone. And yet he hasn't gone for 3.5x his salary once this year with the biggest end zone role in the NFL. And so you kind of go through all the Justin Jefferson with JJ McCarthy, question of volume. So you go through the high priced running backs and the high-priced wide receivers, and it's like, is this a week where we're getting – there's enough guys that, like, just variance says one of these guys could pop for a big game. But when you look on paper, it's like all of these guys, their range is kind of 22 to 27 points, and then you're crossing your fingers and hoping for more than that. So it is an interesting week sort of from a macro perspective of how we put things together. So I have been messing around with this idea just from that starting point of, like, how do we save salary at running back? And I messed around with there are guys with legitimate roles and legitimate ceiling, just few pathways to those ceilings. So I just want to shout out some of these guys really quickly. Aaron Jones, real role, clear pathways to legitimate ceiling. He actually had a huge role this last week until he got hurt, right? Like he was playing way ahead of Jordan Mason. I think that's possible in the spot if he's healthy enough. Kenneth Walker, where we know it's going to be like 13 to 17 touches, but he has the upside. He's put up a couple of big games. Travion Henderson, everyone was on him last week. I guess thinking that he was going to, I don't know what people thought. He literally played the Ramondre Stevenson role. He played 75% of snaps, which is what Ramondre had been doing. And then Terrell Jennings, in his 25% of snaps, had a bunch of carries, which is what Travion Henderson had been doing. But in this spot, you can't really run the ball as well against Tampa. So it's more passing, and that's where Travion Henderson is going to be used a little bit more. So there are guys down there. Oh, and David Montgomery, where it's like, who could put up 20 to 30 at a low price tag? So I think that there are some interesting angles to play around with here where you play one of these guys and you have a lot of extra salary at wide receiver, you're doing something differently. If you want to go higher confidence, the cheapest guy that I see with high confidence outside of Dowdle is DeAndre Swift. Because Monangai looked good last week. He looked really good. He has looked good this season. That's why I locked him onto 100% of my rosters last week, because it was like, he's looked really good in this offense. But so has DeAndre Swift. Like DeAndre Swift has looked awesome in this offense this year. Like hot hand, whatever is being said, like to me, DeAndre Swift remains the 1A, Monangai remains the 1B, and things are going to continue moving forward that way. So we look at Swift's game logs of late, right? It's this 15, 23, 28 and a half. Like I see him having the same range of like 15 to 27 points. His 16.9 points per game is way above anybody else priced around him. And that's how he's been performing in the role that I expect him to continue having this week. So I think that I've built a lot of DeAndre Swift plus Rico Dowdle rosters where it's been like, do I really want to play Kenneth Walker? Do I really want to play David Montgomery, Travion Henderson on a smaller field contest? If not, I think that Swift is a way to get some confidence there. Above that, we have Quinshon Judkins is interesting for the ceiling with kind of a low floor. Kyron Williams is interesting for the ceiling with kind of a low floor. Derrick Henry is interesting for the ceiling with kind of a low floor. Derrick Henry is the one that probably stands out to me the most because just last year in this same offense, he was, a guy who put up whatever it was, 27 plus points in 7 out of 17 games last year. He was a guy that we were willing to pay $8K for. And we've had a limited sample size of games with Lamar Jackson, right? So what he has posted so far in games with Lamar Jackson is within the range of like variance of what he would have done last year. We take out a Cleveland game because that's the Cleveland run defense. And then you've got 33.2 against Buffalo, 11.7 against a tough Detroit run defense, 16.1 against Miami, who has actually gotten a lot better against the run of late. And it's like, that looks about like last year's game logs where another 27-pointer could pop up this week. So, Derrick Henry is kind of the weird question for me as you get to him and then you're like, but James Cook is 700 more, Achane 600 more. They both project better. Like, should I just spend a little bit more in salary? But I do think Derrick Henry is a very sharp way to consider going this week. So to me, like Dowdle, Swift, Derrick Henry is probably the top 3 below 7K in that order. But I could see moving Henry above Swift as I move deeper into the weekend.
It is funny too. I know people are, at least like on Underdog, James Cook is being drafted really highly, and it's kind of the classic thing of, coming off a 27 rush attempt game, then gets this Miami defense, who everyone still remembers getting tattooed by Rico, by Judkins. But like you said, they've kind of firmed up in the past few weeks with,
and even the Judkins game, right? It was 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
It was 84 rush. I mean, there's nowhere for him to go in that game. That was kind of the start of this. And yeah, I mean, Jordan Brooks has been like on fire in run defense, coming downhill and getting into the backfield. I mean, they've really just there's like a different run defense since that Cleveland game, Cleveland, Atlanta, Baltimore, in those spots. Not that matters for James Cook, right? Like we know that Kansas City's a good run defense. We know that Carolina's a good run defense, and he's continued to do well. But one catch across his last 4 games, 2 targets across his last 4 games. So that's what scares you about James Cook. It's basically just on a different team, in terms of like what you're paying for. You're paying for a guy who can go for a huge game on the ground. My theory around it, because James Cook, the whole story of him coming out of college was like, well, he's just a pass catching back, right? Like we know how good he is at catching passes. So my theory here is that like at this point they're hiding that, so that they can, so that as we get deeper into the season, big game deeper into the season or in the playoffs, whatever it is, teams are not preparing for James Cook in the pass game. They're going to have this game where it's like 7-8 targets for James Cook. But, and that can happen at any point. It just doesn't seem like they're going to pull that out against Miami if they've gone 4 games in a row not featuring him in the passing attack.
A question from the chat from Greg. He was talking about Jahmyr Gibbs here. I will just preface this by saying he got out-touched by David Montgomery last week, which is kind of crazy here, and you have to pay an $8K price tag. I don't think anyone ever denies the Gibbs upside, but what is kind of your read on the backfield? Because I feel like the big narrative coming into this season was, is this the year that Montgomery slides into more of a secondary role? And it really is the Gibbs backfield. Seemed like we were maybe about to get that, but then last week's usage seems way more like a 50-50 split.
Well, last week was weird because I think I've got this stat right. Jahmyr Gibbs gave up 7 pressures in that game, and no other running back has given up more than 3 pressures in a game this season. And it's not that he's not a willing pass blocker or even a good pass blocker. It's just that he's a small guy. And the Vikings were very blatantly designing their defense to have rushers sprinting up the middle at Jahmyr Gibbs, right? And so it was like Brian Flores magic saying, where are some of the weaknesses on the Lions that they don't realize they have? And so they were throwing everything they could at basically blowing up Jahmyr Gibbs in pass protection. And so I kind of credit the David Montgomery increased usage to that. It's like, well, we've got to get Gibbs off the field based on how they're attacking here. I don't think that Washington's a team that's going to be able to put them in that same type of bind. So I think that Gibbs goes back to this sort of 65-70% role that we've been seeing this season, gets right back to the higher end touches that we've been seeing this season. So yeah, I think that Gibbs is very viable. I like Washington is so attackable through the air that I lean more toward the pass game, like the legit pass game weapons, as opposed to Gibbs, who's obviously involved in the passing attack, but is not like the pass game weapon, right? But Gibbs is definitely, I think there's like 7 or 8 guys in my player pool right now, and Gibbs is in that group of like James Cook, Devon Achane, where it's like, I don't want to cut these guys out at this point in the week. I haven't been building practice builds with them, but Gibbs is above Cook and Achane for me in terms of like how likely I am to actually end up playing them on a tighter build this week. So no, I'm with you on the Gibbs stuff. I'm not buying too much into last week. I think that was a unique situation. And I think his role, what it's been, which is not as big as people wanted it to be, but it's still bigger than it was last year. I think that's still going to be the case this week. I mean, he has 2 games all season over 20 DraftKings points, but one of them went for 39 or whatever it was against Tampa. So like, we just have to keep in mind that the upside is there. And do we want to take that swing on like, maybe we get a 16-point game, but maybe we get a 35-pointer because he's capable of that.
Let me ask you about the 2 running backs in that Bucks Patriots game. You get another Rachaad White week, although he did see Sean Tucker starting to inch into his base work a little bit. And then we did just get news, Ramondre Stevenson out again. I will say, I thought Trevion Henderson was going to be more in the like 10 to 12 touch range, that they weren't going to really let him cook here, and then gets 14 rushing attempts, 4 receptions, pretty good workload there, but still ceding work to Terrell Jennings and not getting the goal line carries. So are those plays just kind of too messy for you, or is there any beauty in those plays?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've played Rachaad White this year, and I don't think I'm going to. But yeah, Travion Henderson, I touched on him earlier, but I just think if you're looking cheap, he's one of the guys who is viable. Like Swift is a better play and not dramatically more expensive. But yeah, I mean, Henderson stepped right into 75% snap share last week, which is what Ramondre had been doing. He has the Ramondre role, which that was kind of what I expected. My thing was just like, nobody's been playing Ramondre. Ramondre was 5,400. Travion Henderson was 4,900. Do we think that Travion Henderson is that much better than Ramondre, that we should play him at high ownership for 500 less? But yeah, I mean, he basically stepped directly into the Ramondre role. Not a good run offense, not a good run game matchup, but he will get some work through the air. So I don't mind going there this week. I think that I probably won't actually end up there myself, but I think that there's a case to be made for it.
And then I'm assuming you have no interest in these guys, but just referencing the two lead backs in that Jets-Cleveland game, Judkins 6,500, Breece 6K. Breece, who desperately wanted to get traded, apparently was pretty close. Yeah, close to being on the Chiefs, and the Chiefs and the Jets would not budge on their offer / asking price.
If you're Breece Hall and you're stuck now with the Jets the rest of the year, they want to make him a centerpiece of the offense. Don't trade him.
It was so funny too, watching because he was like live tweeting like through the trade deadline, and he's seeing all of his teammates get traded. He's like, "Oh baby, this is a good sign. They are clearing house." They're like, "No, you are staying here." He was not happy, but yeah, any love for those two?
Yeah, I touched on Judkins earlier. I think Judkins is very viable. No Quinnen Williams in the middle. How do the Jets respond as humans to this situation of Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams being traded away? Like, do they rally and be like, hey, look, like we're building for the future. This is our team now. Or is it kind of like, this is a dead season? There's a human element at play here that we can't predict, but they're certainly within the range of that human element is the Jets coming out really flat in this one. And Aaron Glenn soaking up 99% of the energy as he's trying to like drive his guys forward. No, I think Quinshon Judkins, he's so central to this offense. And you're kind of the same thing as Derrick Henry, same thing as James Cook. You're not getting a lot of pass game work, but you're getting a big role on the ground. I think I was surprised last week when the Browns were 1.5 point underdogs. I'm still surprised that they're only 1.5 point favorites. I think this is a great spot for the Browns to be in control of this game. And so, yeah, I think Quinshon Judkins is very viable this week. And I don't think the people will get there as much as they probably should on him either.
Yeah, kind of out of sight, out of mind there with the bye and the dud against New England. So I like that call there as well. I don't think we need to dig too much deeper. I guess one name that I was kind of vaguely interested in just because they're so banged up in the wide receiver room. Thoughts on ETN at 5,700? I kept bracing for the Tootin package to kind of expand, and that really hasn't been the case. So then you get ETN here versus Houston, who's a little easier to run on than they are to throw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see much of a pathway to like a 25-point game from ETN, so I'll pass on that one.
All righty, let's head over to wide receiver. Before we do, let's also mention we have a fresh promo offer here for you guys who haven't signed up for 1 week season. Now at week 10, JM and crew are upping the ante 50% off with promo code Pete50. So you had the 40% with Pete40, just change that 4 to a 5, get the 50% off your rest of season Inner Circle and DFS subs. You can get access to the premium podcast, Jam's Journal, and the Discord, of course, the scroll, all of that good stuff. Anything else that people should know about 1 week season this week?
Yeah,
Jam?
we also have last time we'll do this year, but we've got the $1 week pass again. So if you just want to come in for a week, $1, actually 80 cents if you use promo code Pete on that. So, you want to save a little extra money there, pay 80 cents and hang out with us for the week. So that'll be, projections, ownership projections, player pools, strategy content, all the stuff that we provide. Hop in this week and then maybe next week use that Pete50 to take 50% off rest of the season.
There you go. Make sure you guys check that out. oneweekseason.com, promo code Pete50 for 50% off, or use that $1 DFS pass, and that promo code Pete will always get you 20% off those other packages as well. All right, let's talk wide receiver. We do have the big dogs at the top of the slate. You were kind of mentioning, obviously loving the volume potential for these guys, not necessarily loving the matchup quite as much. So we can include, the Amon-Ra, the Jefferson, Adams, Igbuka as part of this higher tier here. What else do you like on the high end?
Yeah, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Puka Nacua, they're all pretty close for me. And like I said, JSN and Puka, we know how central they are to their offense, but there's going to be like a competitive game, which again, we like competitive games because you have that forward-leaning posture from the offense, but like competitive as in it's going to be tight window throws. There's going to be guys there to make the tackle once they catch the ball. It doesn't mean that they can't break through and have some huge plays. On the flip side, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who there are going to be times in this game, I believe, where things are going to look uncompetitive, where it's going to be like, oh, like he's just wide open or he's just running down the field with the ball in his hands. But then the volume question comes into play there because you don't have the competitive game environment. So because of that, I sort of bunch all these guys up together, and I think that they're all within 300 price tags of one another. They're all basically correctly priced, where we're highly likely to get 20 plus points from all three of these guys. We've got 25 plus point potential from all three of these guys. Harder for any of these three guys to go for 30 plus. And so I don't think that any of these are going to be true difference makers on the slate where it's like, I had to have that guy or I couldn't win this week, which would be one of these guys putting up like 35, 38, 40 plus points. At the same time, like we might not get, you look at the shape of this week, we might not get many 25 pointers. And so having one of these guys on your roster or having CMC on your roster, like I think that having one of the four players from that group of these three wideouts plus CMC is really sharp to consider on any build, especially if you're in contest with 2,000 or fewer entries, because just taking those points that are available is a big part of moving toward a first place finish. So maybe the salary multiplier is not quite what you want, but that's fine. Take the points, and then, now you're working with 8 spots left on your roster. Take away defense, now you're working with 7 spots left on your roster. And so, yeah, I think these top 3 guys plus CMC are in a different class than the other players on the slate in terms of our certainty of them getting 22, 25 plus points. Now, again, one of these 4 could end up posting a dud and putting up 14, 16 points, but realistically, at least 3 of these 4 should be putting up a strong game here. And so, yeah, I think that it's worthwhile to prioritize figuring out a way to get one of these guys in. If you can't, if it's a stack, right, where you're like, well, I've got this quarterback, 3 pass catchers, 1 or 2 players from the other team, you don't have to force the salary to work that because now you're betting on the upside of that stack. But if you're, like a onesie stack or even a double with no bring back, and you have a lot of flexibility on the rest of your roster, on those rosters, I want to be thinking about these guys up at the top immediately after that. So, and it's hard for me to distinguish among them, right? Like we know Puka's role is going to be there. We know the 49ers are going to figure out a way for him to not just be running free downfield. JSN has a better shot of running free downfield, but again, I want to give respect to how good this Arizona defense has been. I say he's got a better shot because Will Johnson and Max Milton both being out is a big deal. But they're going to figure out some way to say, let's do everything we can to make life difficult on JSN. His only bad game this year was against Arizona, right? They're going to try to force him to win in a different way. And JSN still probably gets his, but it just makes it hard for him to have like the 30, 35 pointer. And then again, Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's just a question of how much do they want to feed him in this spot. So yeah, I put those 3 in a totally different tier. JJ, it's which, by the way, I'm so annoyed that his quarterback is now named JJ, like real name JJ.
Yeah, the double. Yeah.
Content referred to him as JJ. But anyhow, Jefferson is Jefferson's like, he's there, right? Like I don't think I'm getting there unless I'm playing him in a stack or a game environment bet or something like that. And it's not about him, obviously. It's not even about JJ McCarthy. It's just about how they're calling this offense, trying to limit the passing volume as much as they can. They did it with Darnold through the first 7 games last year, where I think it was 1 game over 31 pass attempts, something like that. And then the rest of the year was like almost every game, 34 plus pass attempts. They're not there yet with Justin Jefferson. So, with JJ McCarthy. And then Devontae Adams, I mentioned that, but biggest red zone role, biggest end zone role in the NFL, and still hasn't gone more than 3.5x his salary. So he's kind of incorrectly priced for like what his scoring range is, where he can get all these touchdowns and still not go for more than 3.5x his salary. But I think on a Stafford stack, you can make a case there. Large field stuff, you can make a case, but I won't end up there on tighter builds this week.
One guy, I think we were on a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was last week. I can't even remember now. He's still really cheaply priced. And I know you like Lamar. Thoughts on Zay Flowers here? You're mainly talking about Andrews when we were talking about him, but Zay at 5,900.
Yeah, I've actually been the one who's been off of Zay because he doesn't have the red zone role. And so,
yeah.
And then the ownership flows to him. Last I looked earlier this week, he was projected at like one of the top 3 or 4 highest owned plays on the slate. That might have changed by now, but look through these game logs and tell me, again, obviously we were missing Lamar for some of these, but look through last year's game logs and just tell me why he should be one of the highest owned plays at 5,900. I don't quite get it. he's capable of the big game. So I'm certainly aware of the fact that if I don't have any Zay Flowers, he could burn me, right? Because I always compare him to Tyreek Hill. He has a lot of Tyreek Hill in his game in terms of how fast he is, but also how good he is at tracking the ball on these downfield throws. But the usage isn't there to make me scared of missing out. You know what I mean? Where it's like, Achane, going to be popular. I might not have him, and then you're like, oh, cross my fingers. I hope he doesn't have that 34-pointer. Zay Flowers can put up that 30-plus point game, but like, I'm not crossing my fingers. I'm not watching his game and his box score to be like, is he killing me yet? Is everything going okay there? So, yeah, I think Zay Flowers, obviously fine. I love him as a player, he's not for me in DFS this week. And anytime he's high owned, I just sort of treat that as edge, recognizing that there will be a week where he has the big game at high ownership, but most of the time it's not going to burn me and it's actually going to help me because he's going to come in kind of lower scoring for his price tag.
I'm not seeing anything like stand out from like a massive value perspective here. I mean, you were talking a little bit about Mariota not knowing who to stack him with. I mean, Deebo Samuel's 5,600. We talked a little bit about Mac Jones. Juwan Jennings starting to see his role pick up. He's 4,600. Anything down there, sub 5K jump out to you?
Well, this is another reason why I think prioritizing those top three guys makes a lot of sense this week. And I don't know what it was, if it was Lamar and Andrews or Brissett and McBride stack, but I've had one of these rosters or a couple of these rosters where it's like Dowdle and Swift and then two of these high-priced wide receivers. Because when you get down here, like Rome Odunze, the ceiling's there, but it's one game all season. The rest is like 15 and fewer points. He's still got the heel issue that he's working through, and we know that affected Deebo where he finally had to sit out a game. Zay Flowers, we already talked about his ceiling or the question marks toward him reaching ceiling. Stephon Diggs, there's like on a per route basis been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL this year, but he doesn't play 100% of the snaps and they don't throw the ball a ton. So then you're like, well, do they throw more against Tampa? If they do, there's a pathway for him. But like, again, you're really getting thin down here. Tetero McMillan relying on Bryce Young. And this is in this range where we usually have a lot of guys who it's like, yeah, they probably only get you 12 to 15, but they can get you 30. And this week it's like, do any of these guys get us 30? I think it's pretty low probability that anybody below 6K gets there. And so I think Jalen Waddle is kind of the other guy outside those top three that to me stands out as like, here's a pretty high confidence bet. Same as the top three. I think we're overpaying a little bit for our likeliest score, but the ceiling is there to justify it. And just like his role in this offense and how central he is going to be, like people look through the game logs and forget the stories behind the games, right? The story behind that 2.5 pointer was bad weather in Cleveland against the Browns defense. You're relying on Tua in bad weather. That's never going to go well, right? And outside of that, it's like, well, since Tyreek Hill went down, it's 26, it's 15.8, it's 20.9, it's 14.2. Yeah, I'd love it if he was 5.9K instead of 6.4K, but those are pretty good game logs for a guy in this price range, especially on a week like this. So I see Waddle as kind of in a class at cost, in a class similar to those high-priced guys, and then everything else gets like thinner than normal really quickly. And so that pushes me even more toward trying to have Waddle plus one of those high-priced guys or two of those high-priced guys on any roster where my wide receiver spots are not soaked up with a stack. And so, yeah, there's nothing else down here that I can shout out as like high confidence. I think Jameson Williams is very interesting because of the ceiling at cost, especially in this matchup. I think Rashid Shaheed is interesting because he can step into a full role right away. He was in this offense last year. He knows all the verbiage. You know, players often talk about learning a new playbook being like learning a new language. He doesn't have to do that, right? He learned this language last year. And, I've said multiple times, I think that Arizona, same as they did last time, are going to try to sell out to slow down JSN. Well, in theory, that would open up more extra opportunities for Rashid Shaheed. So I think we see 7 targets for Shaheed in this game. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 8, but like somewhere in that range. So I think he's one of the guys that we can be thinking about down here. And then, yeah, definitely Juwan Jennings, Tez Johnson, some of these guys below 5K. If I don't have a lot of confidence in these 5K to 6K guys, maybe I kind of skip that range and go above that and go below that this week.
Yeah, someone in the chat, JB's asking about Demario Douglas. I mean, I'll read off his route percentages the past 3 weeks: 33%, 26%, 33%. And he's obviously had the touchdown last week, but otherwise he had a wide receiver 59 finish, a wide receiver 67 finish. I just don't know how you can play a guy that's only playing a third of the snaps. But I think in large field play, you can throw a dart at a Patriots piece, and say, well, I'm trying to beat 10,000 rosters. I'm trying to beat, like if I were playing MME and playing the slant,
like some of these Patriots pieces would be in 2 or 3% of my rosters, because you're just trying to mix and match and say, where do we get all the pieces coming together? But certainly not something that on tighter builds, on hand builds for small field contests where I'm isolating him. Actually, in that same price range, a lot more interesting to me is Christian Kirk, just because anytime a player's playing his old team, and Christian Kirk, everybody wants Jalen Noel to have the role. He doesn't yet, though. It's still Christian Kirk. Davis Mills throwing the ball. Like, nobody's going to Christian Kirk this week, but the Jags secondary has been one that we've been able to attack. Christian Kirk, against his old team, we went there once already this year. It didn't work out, but I think that's one of the spots where it's like, if you got to save salary, then here's a spot where you can think about it. Jalen Coker, same thing. It's been ugly in production so far, but 65% of the snaps. And, you look through his game logs last year, 3 of his last 7 games, one was 14 DraftKings points, one was 17, one was 24. And then the others looked like what he's done so far, 6.6 and 1.9. Like, that's kind of the Coker experience, is like, you're going to get some 6-point games, some 2-point games, some 7-point games, and then the occasional 14, 17, 24 pointer. So yeah, I mean, Coker at only 3,300, I think is another way to go. I definitely built a couple of Coker plus Dowdle rosters, just saying, let's bet on this offense doing well in this spot and hope that, fingers crossed, hope that Coker gets something going here.
The Coker call is intriguing too, because earlier today, Tet McMillan popped up on the injury report with a hamstring, and I think they're officially listing him as questionable. So Coker could immediately be the highest expected target earner in that offense.
Yeah, that's significant, right? Because Leggett doesn't command targets. It's all kind of schemed stuff, or 50-50 balls that are really like 70-30 balls to the defense when it's being thrown to Leggett. So, even if T-Mac plays, Coker, it's a solid salary saver, but it actually becomes like viable on paper beyond just, hey, hope that we get the points here and we save salary, and that allows us to take a lot more certainty at the upside. Because my thought here this week has been like, when you're building one of these 5K wideouts, you're saying I'm probably getting 12 points, and my fingers are crossed, I'm hoping I get something bigger. And it's like, that squeezes you out of getting an extra one of these higher priced guys. So I'd almost rather have one of these high priced guys plus Coker. Generally speaking, I'd rather have one of these high price guys plus Coker as opposed to 2 of these mid-range guys, because it's just like, yeah, Coker probably doesn't hit, but we know we're getting points from one of the high price guys, whereas that's not even the case in the mid-range. And Coker can hit, right? So you can get Coker plus Amon-Ra St. Brown goes for 50 points, whereas 2 guys, in the 5 to 6K range, you're probably not getting 50 combined points from them this week. So, that's kind of where I've tilted on the Coker thing. It's not that I like Coker, it's that he's viable and he allows you to get these high-priced wideouts. But yeah, there's definitely if Tet McMillan's out, he actually becomes, like, on paper a pretty decent play.
I know your answer to this, but Shorty's my guy, so I will pass along his question to you. Back to the Judy well at 3,900. What if you don't have anything nice to say about Judy? Don't say anything at all.
I didn't know that there was a Judy well.
There's nothing in the well.
I didn't know there was something to go to there. Hope Dylan Gabriel can get him the ball, I guess. Dylan Gabriel's throwing his tight ends like as much as or more than anyone in the NFL. He's not all about throwing outside the numbers, let's just toss the ball over the middle. No, I do think like in large field play, Judy makes a ton of sense because the ceiling's there. Nobody's going to be on him. And occasionally the targets are going to be there. New offensive play caller. So, there's a chance that they shake things up a little bit and throw outside the numbers a little bit more. There's one of those things where it's like in the first quarter, maybe you see like 5 Judy targets and then they just revert back to what they've been doing. But no, I honestly don't hate it, right? Like my whole thing is, where are we finding certainty for smaller field contests, tighter builds? And he certainly doesn't make the pool there. But if you're talking large field play, yeah, like I could see throwing 3 or 4% of Judy onto rosters this week. He's not something I would do on a hand build, but he's not. I mean, he's not as bad as we can joke and make it sound like.
Whatever your ownership projection is for Pop Douglas, add like 5 percentage points to it. I've never seen so much Pop Douglas love in my life. You would think this guy was JSN, the way the chat is talking about Pop Douglas. There you go. The other note too, just to do the serious thing, and people are pointing out that Kayshon Boudy's out. It was actually Kyle Williams who saw the routes upgrade with Boudy out. That's who they plugged in. Pop Douglas has just had the same role all year.
Yeah, no, there's like a 5% chance that Kyle Williams puts up 18 to 20 points this week. Like legit 5% chance, because he's going to be out there quite a bit. And we tend to get one of these 20-pointers every week from the Patriots passing 15, 18, 20-pointers. It's just hard to pinpoint who it's going to be. It could be Kyle Williams. I mean, people thought that he was going to just take the league by storm. It was like that was one of the best picks in the draft. One of the most pro-ready route runners. Patriots got this steal, and the Patriots were like, no, we're good. Like, we've got these other guys already. But it wouldn't be surprising. Remember when Christian Wilkerson came in and had like a 26-point game out of nowhere? Like, Patriots, they can plug a guy in. Josh McDaniels calling the shots. Drake May dropping back to throw a bunch. Kyle Williams wouldn't, like, I have not put him under a practice build yet, but multiple times I've gone down him at 3K and been like, do I want to go here? And then I'm like, nah, not this time. But I'd be more interested in him than in Demario Douglas.
If you could combine Kyle Williams and Demario Douglas, you'd be cooking, because you'd have all the routes and then a guy like Pop who actually can earn targets. So Kyle Williams getting the routes, not earning targets. Pop not getting them. I don't know. Figure it out, Josh McDaniel. We are going to figure out tight end though. Here,
are we?
Probably not, actually. Trey McBride at the top. George Kittle, who it almost seems like he's playing injured right now, and then a ton of these 4K high threes tight ends. Do you see anything to like over here?
Yeah, so McBride, obviously, but I think that McBride's going to be popular. Brissett's not. And the way to play McBride is with Brissett, because if he's hitting, Brissett's probably hitting. And so I think that's the edge there. I'll actually have a rule this week that all of my McBride rosters have to include Brissett. So I won't even play McBride solo, which doesn't mean that can't be optimal. It can be optimal for McBride to hit without Brissett, but just most of the time that won't be optimal. And so I'm going to lean into that where the field isn't leaning into that. And then I've got, if I'm playing Brissett, I've got McBride. If I'm playing Lamar, I've got Mark Andrews. And then it's like, who do I play as the one-offs if I'm not doing that? I think Cade Otton is way more interesting than people are going to want him to be, because, look at these point totals, 12-1, 10-1, 13-5, 8, no touchdowns in any of these. The Patriots are attackable with tight ends. It's been consistent throughout the season, and with all these injuries for the Bucs, Cade Otton's been a big part of things. So Cade Otton, I've actually had some Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson with Cade Otton in the flex, because if you're saying, we're talking about Jalen Coker at 3,300, what about Cade Otton at 3,900? You know what I mean? Like, the ceiling, if you think back in your DFS career and you've ever had one of those weekends where you had a 3,200 wideout who put up 20 DraftKings points, and how dramatically that changed your roster. If you got the 3,200 wideout that put up 20 DraftKings points and got the defense that put up 15 to 20, you're cooking, right? And you look at your roster and man, I'm so good at DFS. And then you're like, okay, if I take away these 35 points that were from these low, high variance positions, low probability positions, all of a sudden this roster is totally different. But this whole discussion around, tight ends don't have enough ceiling. And it's like, are you sure about that? When we're comparing these guys at these price tags, wide receivers in this price range, these would be great scores. We would be flocking to a wide receiver who's doing this with no touchdowns, 5, 6, 9, 5 targets, a game where we expect heavier passing volume. So I think Otton is interesting. If Harold Fannin is out, he popped up with a hamstring injury midweek downgrade. We know how much they lean on the tight ends in this offense. So David Njoku at 3,200 is, to me, a screaming value in the spot where actually Njoku, he's already underpriced. Again, 18.7, 13.7 in 2 of his last 3 games. Since Dylan Gabriel took over, he's been a heavy emphasis in this offense. He's 3.2K, and then if Fannin misses, he's that much better of a play. And then the Kincaid and Laporta, where it's like these guys are so good. It's funny, how often in DFS we play a guy and then the week later he pops. I was all on Kendrick Bourne the week before. He had 11 catches for 140 yards. Kincaid, I was almost on him 2 weeks ago, where he put up 3.3 DraftKings points. Then he comes back next week and puts up 25.1. But the reason I was almost on him was because you just look at his ceiling in this offense. And throughout the season, you're like, man, this dude can hit for some big games. He and Laporta are basically the same thing. They're almost certainly not going to see more than 6 targets. But then it's like, yeah, but those 6 targets can go for 70, 80 yards, 100 yards, a touchdown, 2 touchdowns. So I think both these guys have this kind of low floor, 20 to 25 point ceiling range that we can be thinking about here as well.
Yeah, it's crazy with Kincaid. On the year, averaging 58% of the routes. And in week 8 and 9 have been some of his lowest. He was at 48% in week 8, 53%. He's just such a big part of the offense in the red zone and earns targets whenever he's out there, but they're still have him in platoon.
Even when Diggs was there, Diggs was playing 68% of the snaps.
Yeah.
This offense is I don't know if it's keeping guys healthy for the playoffs or it's, we just want to keep the defense off balance with all these different pieces, but hey, it works for them. It doesn't work for us for fantasy as well as we'd like, but it works for them. So props to Joe Brady and Josh Allen, what they're doing over there.
This is a good note from Jake too. Fannin back at practice today, so kind of muddies up that Browns situation.
I still like Njoku, but yeah, if he's practicing, he's probably playing, and so that's less like powerful than it would have been.
All right, it's time for us to get in the lab and build a lineup here on DraftKings. All right, JM, you gave me a few options for blocks. I know you were kind of thinking about a Lamar one, but I was like, let's get something a little spicier here. So what do you have for us?
Yeah, the other one we were talking about was Brissett, but I said I don't like that one as much just because Seattle's so good on defense. And so we didn't want to go to one that I didn't like as much. We will go back to the well, though, on one that we've done before, which is a Jared Goff triple stack. And so, again, we talked about this in the past, but the idea here is that we're just saying Goff is going to have 2-3 games a season where, he's throwing fewer than 30 passes, but he's going over 300 yards. He's throwing 4 or 5 touchdowns. And this very much seems like one of those types of spots, right? That's well within the range of outcomes here in this spot. In fact, the last time that we talked about the Lions in this light of like, this is the type of game where a Dan Campbell Lions team just keeps their foot on the gas throughout, was against Chicago when Jared Goff put up 37 DraftKings points, threw 5 touchdown passes on 28 pass attempts. And that's kind of the idea that we're playing around with here. So Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. You could put Gibbs in if you wanted to play it differently. The thing with Gibbs is he can hit for a touchdown through the air, but he's not really used in the tight red zone. And so it's more like, hey, maybe he gets a touchdown and they're scoring even more points. But what we want to do is open ourselves up to as many passing touchdowns as possible. We capture, 5 passing touchdowns from Goff. 4 of them come through these guys, and we're cooking. And, you can run the numbers on this. You can, as you get to the larger field contest, you can cut this down to a double stack and say, hey, hopefully I guess on the right guys, right? The larger the tournament field, the more willing I would be to cut it down. The smaller the tournament field, the more I want to just lean into this right here. But you run the numbers on it, and like this whole stack can go for 5x salary multiplier. And now you got 4 spots covered, a huge chunk of your salary covered, keeping you on a 250-point pace or 225-point pace. And obviously, if you miss, the last time we talked about this stack, I was talking about how in the Sims, like on the Sims on OWS, we've got like a graph of where you would finish, right? Distribution of where you would finish in the standings. And it was like a huge spike finishing in the first percentile, right? Like last place in tournaments, and then a huge spike finishing in the top 1% because all your eggs are in the basket of this one bet, where if Goff throws 1 touchdown, huge chunk of your roster is falling apart. If he throws 5 touchdowns, you're so far ahead of the field. And so this one is one that, the Sims obviously love a stack like this. And on a week where we might not have many stacks popping off, it's just a really interesting way to start a roster this week.
You want to know how I know you're a realist, JM? You said Goff's going to throw for 5 touchdowns. This block's going to only capture 4 of them because you have to allot for 1 touchdown to Brock Wright or an offensive line. It happens. Yeah.
Isaac Tesla, they're going to get more involved this week. More involved means like 2 catches and 1 touchdown. There's almost no chance that we capture all the touchdowns. Life's not that good, but life is pretty good enough that we could get 4 of these touchdowns in this spot. And then from here, right, we can throw in Rico Dowdle, and then we can kind of think about like, okay, how do we want to get, like, I've been on the Browns defense a lot this week they're 2,900. They're playing the Jets, competitive advantage. We don't know who the quarterback is, but we do know it's still a good spot for the Browns defense. And so we can throw in the Browns at 2,900, and then we start to see kind of this salary flexibility where it's like, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to go mid-range? Or if we don't have a lot of confidence in the mid-range, is there a way to like double save and go up to Christian McCaffrey? Or is there a way to save at one spot like a Cade Otton and maybe fit in Jalen Waddle and a running back that we like? In fact, I think if we went Cade Otton here, we'd probably be able to wrap things up with a wide receiver we like, somebody like Jalen Waddle, and a running back who we like, which I think we'll be able to get in Derrick Henry on this roster, which gives us a good feel. This is another one where I actually built this roster last night. So this is, hey, the last time we had that, I made 1 change on it and finished second in the face mask. So make some changes to this roster. Don't play this roster, but there is like, this is a really like nice way to attack this particular week for sure.
Yeah, there's some chatter about, people always get spooked about Goff on the road. Obviously, all things being equal, we'd prefer him in the dome. People talking about a little bit of rain. I'll just say, as far as the weather stuff, guys, like we've seen this time and time again, rain does not impact scoring. It's generally high winds are the one thing. And you can also look at the totals, right? Like the total will come down.
Right, the total will
weather.
react.
Yeah, the total has not moved so like you're double or triple counting things. Also, like your projections provider is baking that into stuff as well. So don't double and triple count stuff that doesn't matter there. But do you have any thoughts just about like the road Goff, home Goff splits?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, Peyton Manning, Jared Goff, like any of these guys, we prefer them at home in the dome where they're, we prefer any team in a dome. But Jared Goff has kind of, debunked this over the last couple of years where he's had some big games on the road. He's had some big games outdoors. So there you go. Goff has been outside for years now. Lions shredded Baltimore on the road from Purple Yosh. And so the idea of Goff not being a guy you want to play on the road is more an idea than a reality at this point. And also when we're not trying to be perfect in predicting what's going to happen. And that's never the game of DFS. What we're trying to do is position ourselves to maximize the ceiling that can flow our way. And so if Goff goes from 4% owned down to 3% owned because people are concerned about him being outdoors or whatever, like we'll take that, right? We're not trying to be perfect and sketch out exactly how everything's going to go because that's not how we turn the math in our favor. What we can do is say, there's a pretty decent chance that Goff, okay, we've said it like this. Trying to get 4 uncorrelated spots correct on a roster is, if we say that you're going to get it right about 20% of the time, 25% of the time, let's say 25% of the time, chance of doing that is about 3%, right? Well, is Goff more than 3% likely to have one of these big games that he tends to have 2 or 3 times a season, right? Like I would say resoundingly yes. And so if Goff is even 10% chance of having one of these big games, 8% chance of having one of these big games, the math is dramatically better on the Goff triple stack than on 4 uncorrelated players. And so, it's just a way to turn the math in our favor and maximize our upside toward a tournament win. Because again, like we haven't gotten there on my end this year, but like I keep banging on the door for these tournament wins. That's where the money is these first place, second place finishes, finishing up the top of the leaderboard. And so we're always thinking about how do we maximize our chances of getting up there. This is one of the ways we can maximize our chances this week.
Yep. Yeah. And would you I guess one interesting thing about the 2v2 at the end here is you were mentioning those 3 high-end wide receivers. I mean, could you potentially too, like if you got in a JSN, I guess at 4,700, you're just too squeezed at that RB2 spot.
Yeah, but you can move some other stuff around. You can move down from Otton to Jalen Coker, right? Like we're lowering our confidence level, right? But now we're getting up to one of these 5,300 backs, which is like Aaron Jones, which is Kenneth Walker. So there is range to do something different here at these last couple spots. We could also go with like a Jalen Coker or somebody in that price range, get up to CMC and actually have 1K left over on this roster. So yeah, there's a lot of fun things that you can do in these last couple spots. I think the highest confidence is going with like Waddle and Swift or Waddle and Derrick Henry, but there's certainly a lot of different ways that you can play out the end of this roster. And yeah, this is a build I had last night that I was kind of messing around with some of the different ways you can finish off these last few spots, which is, I mean, I guess if you start with the Goff triple stack, plus Rico Dowdle, plus the Browns defense, like the roster is going to look kind of the same. You have a few choices left and there's a few different ways to play it, but definitely one of the ways I'm going to be messing around with on tighter builds this week.
All right, here for our audio listeners, our core block here, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. Here we did get Rico Dowdle in, Cade Otton to kind of flex Brown's defense, and then messing with some various 2v2s here with getting like a mid-tier running back and a higher end, I guess, mid-tier wide receiver there. But as always, this is meant to just get the juices flowing. And if you want to use one of the other blocks that got discarded there, that Lamar to Andrews, a fun one, in the Jacoby to Trey McBride, you can have some fun building those ones out there. But JM, a pleasure as always. Got to take advantage of the $1 DFS pass. Make that 80 cents with promo code Pete, or if you want to get the whole kit and caboodle, use promo code Pete50 for now 50% off rest of season. Incredible deal. Take advantage of it. Any final thoughts here, JM?
Yeah, it's a unique weekend. Every weekend is unique, but this one really stands out as unique in a variety of ways. And so I want to encourage you guys to think about this weekend, think about the puzzle that we're trying to solve for this particular weekend. think about how you're targeting first place as opposed to just trying to get some good players onto a roster together. And hopefully I'll see you at the top of the leaderboards on Sunday.
Yes. Sounds good, JM. Appreciate it. Don't dupe JM in his entries with this lineup. Do your own research, make your own 2v2s, all of that good stuff. Otherwise, we will see JM back next week for another edition of Block Party. The week 11 Block Party is where we will be at in less than a week. So until next time, JM, we'll catch you later. All right, peace. All right, he's back, fresh off of another Millie win. Youdacao, congratulations. Gonna assume it was a pretty big week 10 for you. Week 9, I should say.
I needed it because it was the only thing I won that week. So it would have been a bad one without it. So those are sort of the swings that come with it.
Yeah. What was so you had, it was the I can pull it up here. You sent me the link, right?
Yep.
Yeah, let me pull this up here. The special sauce on this one was the double tight end with Colston Loveland at 1.2% and Brock Bowers,
right,
combining for almost 90 points. You want to talk through as I get this pulled up, kind of this lineup and how this stuff comes together?
Yeah. Well, this is my only Loveland team, as it turns out. So I'm not targeting him in any way.
Yeah.
It's just when I ran during this, like these builds, it probably involved like having like more of an onslaught build, having 3 from the game. So I wasn't even aware of this team probably until the Loveland little fluky play.
Mm-hmm.
But like you could argue Chase there is better than Puka if I can get to Chase even. I don't know if pricing maybe didn't allow for it. But yeah, my only Loveland, it is always, I think, good practice to have that tight end, to knock out a tight end spot as a stack with the QB, really, even if it's like not a great play from a price perspective, just because of like the variance of that position and the touchdown dependency. So,
yep. Yeah, and then, I was looking through your lineup. Seemed like you did have a pretty tight core as far as like you had a ton of CMC, a ton of Manungai, a ton of Bowers. Was that the case that you were kind of rotating through stacks around those guys?
I mean, I was over Bowers. I would have liked to have essentially CMC as a lock button, but I knew it was also like the chalkiest running back. So that couldn't really allow for that from the ownership perspective. My biggest stand was probably on Puka. I had him everywhere.
Yeah. And I guess that's like one of the, at 8,500, scoring 22 points, that's not smashing his price tag, but he gets you enough raw points that if you do hit on the mega scores in the lineup that you're going to be fine.
Yeah, he also played 2.5 quarters.
Yeah.
And in the first half, it was sort of a little bit like the Jacksonville game where they're not necessarily run first. They'll run actually to like bleed the game at the end. But with like a situation neutral spot, we already saw them kind of just like sling to like get the lead. And so that's like 2.5 quarters. And he had like the good practice reports and stuff like that. So I thought he'd be higher than 20%, but that's just a function of how well I was projecting him. But at 20%, it's actually even better. I thought he'd be like 30, 20, 25.
Did you have a change of heart on CMC? I know like one of the contrarian angles you liked on the Friday show was like the Giants defense and that correlation with Tracy. Is it just CMC's role is just kind of immune to that kind of stuff, or how did that pan out for you?
No, I wasn't maybe I just never touched on it. I wasn't talking him down at any point. It's just a function of the ownership. And I was significantly over on Tracy too. Yeah.
Yep. And with these, how many lineups did you put in this? This
would have to be 150.
150. Okay. Gotcha. And so, and you were using like a combination of the Sims and the optimizer to build these out?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, any other takeaways from this team for you here? I mean, you sidestepped the Rome Odunze landmine. That was one that.
So I did have a lot of DJ Moore.
Okay.
I think it might have been like the running back situation.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually, I guess he did have the rushing touchdown. That like he has that role of like sort of like a Swiss Army knife. He could do a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know I forgot he had a passing touchdown. That's funny. He really did everything.
Trick play. Yeah.
Yeah. So like he has that bit of a role where he can fill in a lot of the gaps. But I don't know. I think I might have had more DJ Moore with Caleb than Rome Odunze even. So maybe it's like a function of pricing. I feel like it has to be that. But it wasn't like really intentional. I did like DJ Moore, but it wasn't like I disliked Rome Odunze.
Well, it was kind of a classic spot. I mean, like obviously in hindsight it looks so good, but even from a process standpoint where you're getting lower price, lower ownership, and the projection difference between those two wasn't that massive. It's just people prefer Rome Odunze and kind of he comes preloaded in a lot of the Caleb stuff.
Yeah, Rome's probably a good bounce back for this week.
Yep. All right, let's talk some week 10 here. I'll get Run the Sims pulled up. I should also mention, in addition to, we talked about the new promo code for 1 week season, we have a huge jump in promo code because we're going from 10% off with promo code Pete to 50% off with promo code Pete. That's going to be on your first payment. So if you do like the annual package, you can get the 50% off. You can obviously do it for the monthly stuff too, but it's 50% off that first payment. So if you guys have been wanting to check out Run the Sims for the rest of the season or want to lock in a really nice price for a year, take advantage of that. It's the same promo code Pete. It'll just get you 50% off here, and you guys can take advantage of all these various tools that we are showcasing on the stream here. Let's do some input volatility here, Yuda. One that I think is going to be interesting because it is a good spot for the run game is Chicago. DeAndre Swift back. He's been practicing in full. We see Monangai handle the full load last week. What do you think about this split between Swift and Monangai?
It's a question. Probably makes it hard to really take either side just the way they're priced now. Because it just becomes really difficult. And I don't even know if we can really make any assumptions about whether Monangai is a starter now. I would have to look at like sort of what coaches are saying.
You know, it's funny you say that because there was the quote from Ben Johnson earlier today, and he basically called it a hot hand situation was what he said about.
I mean, that's like the worst. That's not what you want to hear. So
no. Yeah. Which, do you have any thoughts overall on this spot for the Bears? I mean, they just won you a milli. Can you go back to the well with it here against the Giants?
Definitely. Just like looking at the ownerships, because of the pricing on like Odunze hadn't really moved. I know people are going to be trying to steer a little clear of that. It's like Caleb is actually priced fine. It's the receivers that are a little overpriced relative to what people would like to pay that makes it a little more appealing from an ownership side. And then you get the Giants. So they're notoriously bad against perimeter guys. So that's sort of why I do like going back on Caleb, specifically the wide receivers.
One other, we had the trade deadline, so that's certainly kind of altered the looks for some teams. Maybe we could hit on, the Saints without Shaheed, and then maybe the Seahawks with Shaheed. Obviously, some input volatility on how those offenses shake out in the fallout there.
Oh, yeah. So it's always kind of gross, but I tend to like the Saints a lot. And that was with Rattler, just with like the variance in his play. But Tyler Shough, he's not like that different than Rattler, probably a little more stabilizing, and they're not going to let him sort of have basically do whatever he wants on the field. Like he's going to be like reeled in a little bit more. But that kind of gets offset with the target trees getting a little more condensed without Shaheed, because he was siphoning off a lot. And there was just the Kamara report. He's questionable now. He's been pretty brutal. I don't really know if like Devin Neal would be like a good 1-for-1 for Kamara necessarily, not really the same role. But it could kind of allow the receivers like Juwan Johnson, Olave to like take on a little more as like a extension of the run game.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And this is where my head was going too, with Shorty here. I mean, we already saw them giving Taysom like multiple snaps there, even right as they, gave the reins over to Shough. 2,700 Taysom Hill. Do you think you could see a spike there?
Yeah, it's hard for me to buy in, but like definitely he's just like way too much variance for me to really know or like really have a good idea of what to do with. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes it difficult unless, it would be too much. Like you would have to know the play calls and stuff like that, because it's hard to assume, because if he just like sticks with like even a role that's remotely similar to what he's done, it doesn't work out from a price standpoint.
Have you thought about calling up the New Orleans coaching staff and saying, hey, if you guys could just tell me your play calls, it would really help me out in informing my DFS decisions?
Yeah, it'd be great, but it's not the NBA here. So
what about on the flip side with Sam Darnold getting Rashid Shaheed? Seems, on paper like an awesome fit for him.
It is. I mean, it actually probably allows JSN to like maintain what he's been doing a little better, just because there's more like field stretching threats, and also the breakout of Horton last week is going to be really good for their spacing. I don't know if it's like great for like those other receivers that aren't JSN, but it'll be good for Darnold. It makes him a little more dynamic. It's probably good for the run game. Like this week, everyone's going to be on JSN regardless, but no one's going to be on like any other part of this team, I'd say. But like, again, if you're taking a Darnold, it's not like you're really going to be able to take anyone other than JSN. So it doesn't really move the needle for DFS on this week.
So Shaheed, just new team, short week, 5,200, just not in play for you. I
mean, Horton also, like, you can't really assume that he takes on like that full Horton role after what he just did.
Yeah.
I just think it's probably good for the team.
Yeah.
And also on the other side, I think the Niners are kind of chalk with how they're, or not, wrong game actually. Yeah, sorry, I got the schedule confused.
Oh, no worries. I mean, Cardinals, their running back room's kind of a mess. And then it's really just like, McBride and, Brissett has a little bit of intrigue there at 4,600.
Yeah, he might get played. I think QBs are really spread this week. Brissett's almost certainly going to get played, actually, with how you can easily get to McBride, and then Harrison had that little breakout. So I could actually see the ownership on this game get fairly high, because you can run back JSN as well. Mm-hmm. And 4.6% also makes that pretty easy.
Another input volatility spot, I think, would be the New England Patriots. We have Kayshon Boutte out this week. We got news Ramondre is going to be out. Is this a game you like? And if so, how would you attack the Patriots?
I did really like the Henderson role last week. He will just, like, we were speculating whether he's going to get those goal line carries, and they're just pounding Jennings. So if you were to just assume that were to stay the same, he's still going to project decently, is Henderson. And I don't know how willing people are to systemically pair him with the Drake May, but he's going to be more correlated to the quarterback than your typical running back. And they're really actually seeking him out on those kind of design short passes. You could do that against the Bucks as well, since it's very hard to run up the middle against them. Yeah, I like that call a lot, just because it is hard to identify the other stacking partners with May and the wide receivers. None of them really separating. What do you think about Diggs? He's like,
been earning targets, but just hasn't really spiked.
I mean, I think that's by design, that they're just trying to like keep him healthy at this stage in his career. That would be, we've already talked about this earlier because we were wondering when his rates would go up. I guess it could easily be this week just by necessity.
Yeah.
If we take a look at sort of the snaps that Keyshawn Boutte was having, it's like exclusively outside, right? And Diggs been playing like this like hybrid slot role. They don't really have like, if you don't run Diggs a little more outside, you're going Mac Hollins basically.
Yeah.
Because Pop Douglas can only play slot at this point, so it could be by necessity that like we could get like 80-90% on Diggs this week. It's also kind of a big game, and it's like it's sort of like the only relatively tougher game on the schedule that the Pats have had in a while. So if they want to like sort of prioritize this game more than others, it almost certainly involves going to Diggs more.
Yep. I got to ask you, as the Jets whisperer here, I don't know if we've gotten official word on Fields starting. I think that's what everyone's assuming at this point. But thoughts on the Jets post-trade deadline? Brees still on the roster. Anything to like in this one?
Just like the talent of like Fields, Wilson, and their ability to score points, but it's not like I love the Jets relative. They were just very overlooked the other time when it was the Bengals. But this is very much a stinker of a matchup. I mean, they're all cheap enough that you can play them. I'm in New York here, so had like a little bet among friends that like a loser basically has to attend this game and like take the train home. And so I wasn't able to like participate given like I'm grinding this, but it was a fun punishment. Wait,
did I take it you didn't lose though?
No, I can't be in the bet, but it was done, and someone's going and taking the train back.
Okay, so this was before the season started. You guys circled the game on the calendar that would.
This was this past week.
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, because it was funny. I was remembering this week. It was 2 years ago. We had the Week 17 game, and all of us best ball bros were like, no one wanted to touch that Jets Browns game because it's like cold, whatever. These defenses, and then that was the game that went off. Njoku went nuts. I think it was Breece Hall went nuts in that game. So who knows? Maybe your friend.
Yeah, it's really a who knows, but it's not. I'm not going to be like seeking this one out.
Yep. All right, we can move on. Let's talk about your favorite game this week. Where do you see yourself loading up?
I like the late Detroit Washington. A lot of man coverage in the game, and specifically, I think Detroit can push. I mean, they're obviously going to score easily. They always do. I think they're more willing to push from the narrative side of like that terrible playoff loss last year. I think they have some ghosts here. So, but also the pricing lines up well with like Jameson Williams. He sort of like showed himself again in the offense, but coverages dictate in this game that like the Washington corners don't really have the foot speed to keep up, and their scheme doesn't really send that much help. So that's sort of it lines up well with how he plays.
Yeah, what is your real Jameson? He's someone we all came into the season with high hopes on. He's like out there running the routes, but just has not been commanding targets at the clip that everyone kind of hoped.
Yeah, but like that's sort of how he's always been. It's just that last year, right, he started hot, and so people like thought he basically maintained it for a whole year. But it's like talent's obviously still there. It's almost more just like circumstantial with how the stuff played out. I don't think I would like mark him down a huge extent.
Yeah, the on Block Party with JM, we built. He also likes the Goff stuff. We did a Goff triple that we built there at the end of the show. We haven't talked a ton about the Commanders side though. Obviously, the Lions don't necessarily need to be pushed, but are there any elements on the Commander side that you would dabble into?
I mean, Debo is cheap, so it would just be Debo Samuel. There's, I mean, nothing particularly interesting, I guess. You're guessing a little bit with like the other wide receivers, but what do you call Luke McCaffrey's not in, so I would think that would lend to a little bit more Jalen Lane.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's obviously a very low owned piece. Not necessarily Chris Moore, since he's always been more outside. Jalen Lane would probably fill more of that inside role. But I mean, they are lacking in like the downfield threats though, because they really need McLaurin for that. And Debo, like they're likely to like throw a little more Debo out there, but that's not even his best role. Back
to the Lions, thoughts on the backfield. We were talking about it a little bit there, and you see the rushing split pretty even. Montgomery actually out-touched him last week. Interested in the running backs, and then if so, would you include them as part of like Goff stacks or play it exclusively through the passing game?
I mean, I favor the passing game a little bit more for them if my thesis is that they could want to run up the score after losing by like 20 in the playoffs. But obviously the running backs are capable of generating big plays themselves. But it's also just like the Commanders, it's just much easier to throw on them anyway. So I don't really have strong takes for the running game.
Yep.
Like sort of as is good for me.
It seems like, do you like, not that these guys have to be pitted against each other, but as far as like ancillary pieces, Jamo or Laporta, it sounds like maybe leaning a little bit more towards the Jamo side.
Definitely, but I might even lean more towards the Laporta than St. Brown.
Okay, gotcha. So just going with the cheap.
They're playing with a lead, most likely. And St. Brown is like a guy that kind of racks them up a lot of targets when they're playing from behind.
And is Goff? I mean, Goff's pretty much always a guy you're looking to double stack.
Yeah, always. And you throw Gibbs in there with like the candidates. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess like you guys did a triple stack build. Like that's fine. Sounds good to me too.
Yeah. Yeah, we did it. Yeah, with just all the pass catchers there. But I guess, yeah, I mean, if you're going to do Gibbs, it's probably just too expensive to do Gibbs and Amon-Ra on the same rosters, right? With their salaries.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like we definitely have some consensus brewing on liking this Detroit-Washington game. We can talk a little bit about some chalk. It does seem like the two most popular quarterbacks are going to be the most expensive ones from early ownership in Allen and Lamar. And I know you mentioned too, we have a cheap Zay Flowers price tag again. So like, what are your thoughts on this game environment, Baltimore, Minnesota, and if you can lean into that Baltimore chalk?
Yeah, I guess it seems as though Allen is going to be rather chalk, but I'm not sure he's going to be the most chalk.
Yeah.
Because it's just hard to pair him, and people don't really tend to want to take the 10-point spread. So I'm not really buying Allen being the most owned, whereas Lamar to Zay Flowers, that's very easy, and they're not worried about a blowout scenario. They are similar though in that they have like the touchdown siphoning running back. So I think I would be trying to max one all those: Allen, Cook, Lamar, Henry.
Gotcha. Yep. And then any thoughts on if you were going to try to stack Lamar more creative because you like this game, what would be the next piece?
Yeah, you can't really.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, from like if you're looking out for like price, it would just be like, I mean, Bateman's fine, and maybe Andrews works out a little more from a value perspective, but I have a feeling if people are taking Lamar, they're probably going to go to Andrews. So Bateman would be the low owned piece there.
Yeah.
Which I don't hate.
Yeah.
And Lamar is difficult to stack because you don't ever need to double stack him. So you are just like throwing darts with Lamar or with Flowers being the most likely one.
Thoughts on what you've seen from JJ McCarthy so far and the viability of, playing the Vikings offense?
Just a lot of heart. I'm pretty skeptical of the arm, as far as like accuracy, but like the Baltimore scheme is kind of appealing to attack. There's a lot of variance in that, a lot of man coverage, extremely high blitz rate. Even last year when they weren't blitzing as much, the coverage in like Harbaugh's scheme is very friendly to like wide receiver one. Maybe it's just because they played Jamar Chase a few times, but he absolutely destroyed. So from like a route tree and like skill perspective, Jefferson's kind of similar to that. It's just McCarthy's not Joe Burrow, so you would need McCarthy, or you would need Jefferson to do heavy lifting here. But that's fine. Like McCarthy is cheap. He can run. He has like garbage. There's like garbage time equity there too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure he's like extremely low owned actually, with people like being on this game, but I probably like Jefferson slightly more than market. And a lot of the time that would come with McCarthy's stack. I mean, Aaron Jones doesn't seem too bad either with how Baltimore blitzes a lot. Basically, if they can pick that up, everyone's viable because the prices aren't exorbitant. So like Addison, Hawkinson, all these guys, there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the backfield where it was like, Aaron Jones came back to a really big role. He just gets banged up in that game, which has kind of been the story of his career, but it doesn't seem like Mason is going to be as big of a factor.
Yeah, he's sneaky. So I guess I like McCarthy partially because of how it lines up for Jefferson well, but also all these other pieces are explosive enough, and Baltimore has enough variance in how they play that it's like the Tyler Shough thing. Like if you're that cheap and you have a lot of variance, that's good enough.
Yep. As far as like other chalk, I think at the running back position, it's looking like Rico, CMC, and Achane are going to be the most popular plays. Any thoughts on that trio as far as good chalk, bad chalk?
I'm not certain on Achane, but it'd be like Rico by a lot.
Yeah.
And then McCaffrey's kind of priced up where whatever is reported is probably around what it is, but it'll be like a lot of Rico. I'm not rushing to play 6.3 Rico in this game.
Okay.
McMillan, we don't know about him yet, but it sounds bad actually.
Yeah, it did sound bad. Canales made it seem like he had a real shot at missing.
Yeah, I don't think that's good for Rico.
Okay.
They have no other threat outside. Like that might be like slightly more pass catching, but that's not really his role as like the grinder here. It's just going to be Saints are going to be more willing to stack the box. Carolina doesn't have like the other guys that are even close to the same level threat, and Bryce Young in this form isn't going to be able to make anyone pay. So it'll be pretty hard for Rico. He's been running very well, so that's a plus. But given like he might be 40%, I'm okay with doing like Saints D. Pretty unknown.
Yeah.
They're not even that bad of a unit. The team overall just makes the offense. It's like the offense actually has made so many mistakes that it screws over the defense. But the defense has been okay.
Yeah. And that is, as we shift to some of the more contrarian spots, and we've kind of hit on a few of them so far, but it is the Saints for you is a spot you like. And is that a way too to just like double dip on the leverage with the Rico chalk?
To an extent, it would be more leverage if they had like their own running back that could slow the game down and control the clock, but that's not really the case. Because then like they don't really have the capability to make it a shootout, nor does Carolina. That might also hurt Dowdle a little bit when it's just like they're just airing it out both sides, but that's not happening here. Maybe if like we can get clarity on like a real Devin Neal role.
Yeah.
Mara's out. You could pair that with the defense, but he's also really not an NFL player right now.
Yeah.
Or never really has been. So you can't really attack it from that side. it's more of like, for me, more of like a standard fade.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would be a really interesting dynamic if Kamara was out, because, you know, people would not want to use Rico and Neal in the same lineup either. So that's where you could really have an interesting thing there on the Neal side. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they really trust him fully right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little input volatile with Vele.
Yeah.
But I do think they use Cooks a good amount. That it could be like, that's actually input volatile because they went to Cooks in the same game. Did Shaheed get hurt during the game, or was that?
I don't think he got hurt. I don't think he did.
Then I just assumed he got hurt because Cooks really had a role there. It might have been like garbage time even. Anyway, Cooks plays more of a Shaheed role, but they'd probably be more interested in seeing what they have in Vele. But it's a lot to assume.
Considering they basically, with the compensation they gave up for Vele and got back from Shaheed, they essentially traded Shaheed for Vele, which seems bad.
Yeah. I like Jawan Johnson though.
Yeah. Here on the for those of you guys watching live, we got the target shares pulled up. 18% target share there, 19.4% TD market share. Easily the second option behind Olave in that offense.
Like Carolina plays like a vanilla like zone type of game, so if you want to keep things simple for Shough, he's like an easy read. Is Jawan Johnson.
And how many points? Like it sounds like you have some interest in like the Shough double with Olave and Jawan. Like what's the target score you're looking for from Shough at 40?
Not much.
Like
you're happy with 20, but he might be the cheapest on the slate. And if like the more expensive studs on the slate do well, you see this a lot where just a solid score from a minimum QB is better than like a 35 from Allen.
Yep. Let's your other contrarian spot you like, and we did kind of hit on this a little bit, is going back to Caleb, but we did get two pieces of news here on the Bears. I mentioned the hot hand thing with the running backs. Luther Burden not listed on the injury report. He's going to be back in week 10. And then Cole Kmet also not listed on the injury report. Obviously, Colson Loveland's big day. He had seen a big routes jump even with Kmet in the lineup, but then obviously spiked once Kmet left the game with a concussion. So how are you thinking about all the moving parts in this passing game?
That's not really changing much for me because I'm more interested in the receivers anyway. And Burden might actually be a slight bonus to DJ Moore and Odunze with like the routes he runs. Zacchaeus is more like that short stuff, easier reads, and he was probably siphoning a lot of stuff that would go to Rome just probably because of how they're covering Rome that game. So him being out is probably good for Rome, or is Burden being out there is probably good for Rome. It doesn't really change much. And I know I like won the tournament last week with Loveland, but last on this show I was actually talking down Loveland. So
no, I'm sorry. Once you win $1 million with a player, you got to buy the jersey and become.
I think I said like Loveland's just a best ball guy when you asked me about him before.
Yes. I hope I win $1 million in best ball with Colson Loveland as well. That would be nice. So it's like if you're getting into Caleb and the tight end stuff is messy, is it really just Rome and DJ Moore are the premier pass catching options for you?
You could go to Loveland. It's like, but for me, it would just be like the same as last week. It would just be like, I would only have him with Caleb, and I'm going to have like two teams with him.
Yeah. Gotcha. On the Giants side, like if you're playing into this game, would you be messing around with a bring back? I guess it's just so hard, right?
You don't have to. But like, yeah, I would. You definitely could. It's just I'm not going to try to jam it. And I think Dart might actually get played to some extent. But like Dart isn't like propping up the passing game in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're all appealing. The Bears are a good matchup, but given ownerships and stuff like that, I'm not rushing to like get these Giants guys. Slayton probably a little more sneaky because people kind of underrate his ability as like a player overall, and he's been out there like on this team like 10 years now or something. But like I don't know, like he's definitely explosive to the point where you'd almost rather have him with Dart. Wandale's more of like a natural bring back. I think the Tracy role, I'm okay with going back on Tracy too.
Okay.
Because they were in that game for a while, and I kind of think they wanted Singletary and protection, but that's more of like a dart throw, no pun. Tracy, it's like I can see if like the Bears do well, that Tracy would be a much more viable bring back, and like equally good to the pass catchers.
It was kind of interesting with the Tracy Singletary split in that Tracy was actually playing some of the pass downs, and I think had more even targets than Singletary there. So I was having a hard time getting a read on that split.
Right. Yeah, I was confused too. But like they only had Tracy block. They didn't have Tracy block at all. So I kind of think it was from that. But in the previous week, I thought he like had a good all around game. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of what was confusing me. But I mean, this is just like coaching, decision making stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that is it. It's certainly tricky with how to play the Giants, just because the best option is quarterback, and he's going to be popular. So yeah, it might be one to just let it go from a bring back perspective. I did run some lineups before the show, so let's head over here and check out what some of these teams look like. We can go hunting for some of these takes and seeing how they line up. I mean, one guy we didn't talk about that's popping here in the top is Baker Mayfield. This top lineup here, 174.8% EV, is just a Baker to Igbuka skinny stack. What do you think about that? We talked about the Patriots, but what do you think about the Bucs?
I kind of like in line the market. That's actually a really good team though, because you have the touchdown dependent running back who doesn't really catch balls with the defense in like that prime matchup. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Yuta referencing, this has Judkins and Cleveland Browns correlation. The rest of the lineup does have Rico. There's Wan'Dale Robinson, Chris Olave getting that target share boost, Dalton Schultz at tight end, and Trey McBride. So double tight end here in Dalton Schultz. But yeah, that lineup looks pretty nice.
Yeah, I agree.
The second lineup here is a Mac Jones double to George Kittle and Jawan Jennings. We haven't talked too much about the Niners. What do you think about the spot for them?
I think it's like Mac Jones might get owned just because the pass catchers are priced well. It is a really competitive game. So I don't know if like it's not going to be one of those situations where like one of the teams lets go of the rope. So it doesn't apply to this team, but I definitely wouldn't try to go Jennings, Kittle, McCaffrey in the same, even though you easily could with how cheap they are. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't think all three can get there in a game like this.
Okay.
But I do like if like that's like a good way to fade a McCaffrey in a lineup by taking Kittle, Jennings.
Yeah, it does. I would say, on the screen, we have about 12 lineups. I would say about 80% of them have Rico in it. There's a few combos that don't. Based on how you were talking, it sounds like you're a little skeptical of chalk Rico. Like how big of a stand would you envision yourself fading him, like assuming he's at, 40% ownership or whatever?
I mean, just like, it's obviously not zero, but I couldn't say maybe like 20-ish. I just would rather not be over on that at that price. This matchup, especially if McMillan's not out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does
seem a lot. Like 6.3, you either got a bonus or you got to get a touchdown or two to like really make people feel it like you need 20.
Yep. There is a JJ McCarthy lineup here. JJ McCarthy to Justin Jefferson. And then right above it, we get, here we go again. Yeah. This like happened last time JM and I built the Goff lineup, and then you liked it. But
Dolphins against the Bills, that's kind of
This is the triple. Goff.
Okay, Dolphins is 2K. That's why.
Okay.
But like, how do you take it? It's hard to get there on defense versus Josh Allen.
I know. The Sims clearly like that. The DST running back correlation against like a chalk or expensive offer.
From my perspective, it makes much more sense on the Judkins and an Achan, who's not even that correlated to defense.
True. Yep.
Jerry Jeudy, though, I was looking at that.
Yeah.
I like that as a one-off.
That
Bye week, maybe no Fannin. Jets are a little friendly outside. No Gardner. Like I was just looking at it, it's like that looked interesting. Today, but I haven't like really dived in or made projections.
There's a few Jared Goffs in here. There's another triple down here. This is a Goff, Amon-Ra, Jamo, Laporta. This one has Cook.
A lot of Goff doubles and triples. So yeah, they're on.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? We haven't talked about it's a play like Kenneth Walker. What thoughts on getting thin?
Something like that's always good as a one-off because he kind of takes away the points in the game. Extremely touchdown dependent, very explosive runner. I mean, I guess he could also speed up a game. But I think a lot of the games he has done well, and it's like slow game, Seahawks defense like dominated, and you don't want anything else. Actually, I remember like I went there around this time, like 2 years ago for a Millie Maker. It was like it was actually Cardinals, and it was like James Conner was out or something, and like DeMarcado or someone like that. They all became chalk. Trey McBride, they all became chalk. And I did like Walker Seahawks, and like nobody scored points other than Walker in the whole game than Walker Seahawks. Not saying that's even remotely the same situation, but like as a one-off, guy like that's always good.
One thing, like scanning these top lineups here, I don't see basically any JSN, and Jake in the chat asking thoughts about fading JSN and playing Arizona DST. Do you have any thoughts on that, on those angles?
Usually I don't really consider wide receivers in opposing defense to be that inverse. It's always like opposing running backs more so. Yeah. Right? Like running backs, they're not gonna like sometimes receivers, the defense like scores a touchdown and the receiver on the other side has to do more now. Whereas you wouldn't run into that situation with like a running back like a Judkins or something. So even like an Achan, it's like Achan's like a receiver, so it's not that inverse correlated. So like JSN, the defense as well, he actually probably has to do more.
Let's see here. Let's see what some Caleb lineups look like here. The top one is a Caleb to Rome skinny. Has Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride without the cheap Jacoby. That's interesting, but does get in Amon-Ra. There's Kenneth Walker again, Rico, and then Christian Kirk also. That's kind of a funky lineup right there.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that Kirk stuff. I mean, that game is a little gross. Jags. Yeah. I don't even know his status.
I think he's good to go.
They're hard to play.
Yeah.
I think Jacksonville's defense is probably chalk.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense against Davis Mills. The second lineup's kind of interesting. It's another Caleb to Rome. This one, though, has Olave and Juwan Johnson, where you're like, let me get some ceiling at quarterback, but still scoop up this value. And then it eats some chalk, Rico Zay, but then has James Cook, and then a David Montgomery Detroit Lions DST correlation, which could be another way to play your angle of a Lions route.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a classic line. Like, if I play Montgomery Lions, there's no way I'm playing any other thing from that game.
Yep. 2 touchdowns from Montgomery, DST, score.
Yeah.
And move on. Let's see if we can get the Sims to like any Tyler Shough here.
They should.
Yeah, one lineup here. There's the Shough to Jawan. If you did play Shough, would it always be a double for you, or would you entertain?
No, you could do that.
Okay.
You could definitely skinny.
Yeah. The second lineup is the double with Olave and Juwan. This one, our first Puka sighting, looking at lineups. Again, another Christian Kirk, Swift, Rico, Justin Jefferson there.
Yeah, I don't think any QB is like running away with ownership, so you could probably do whatever you want, and it's not overly chalk.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think that the cheap ones people would go to would be McCarthy, Brissett are probably going to be the popular cheap ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Allen, but we're not sure. Lamar, for sure.
Yes.
And that's already 4 guys, so.
For sure. Minnesota Mike says, are you able to project Swift out and see what it does to the Bear stacks? That's the beauty of Run
We
the
do that.
Sims. You can go in, you can nuke any player you want to 0, use the smart adjust, the normalize, or shift it yourself, and then rerun the Sims. You can even go in and adjust the ownership stuff. If you say, hey, Rico Dowdle isn't going to be 40%, he's going to be 55%, go adjust that, then see, hey, maybe Rico doesn't populate. So that is the selling point here of Run the Sims. You can go in, tweak these market shares, tweak the ownership, however you see fit, and then see how the Sims adjust to it. And that's a good reminder that you guys can get 50% off of your first payment of whatever Run the Sims package you would like to check out. That, of course, includes if you want to get the Shady Advice portfolio tool included, all kinds of different packages, but 50% off your first payment. So you can maximize that if you want to lock it in for a year or just dabble with some of the monthly packages there. But Yuda, any other final words for you or anything people should know about Run the Sims this week?
No, I think we're still making some updates. So just stay tuned and we'll announce anything as it comes. Beautiful.
Yeah, hop in the Run the Sims Discord if you guys ever have questions. As we say every week, Brian loves fielding customer support questions. It's his lifeblood. Go pepper him with as many questions as possible. And yeah, we are going to hop over to do Often on the Clock, the Underdog DFS preview with John and Nez. If you're watching here, you should be automatically redirected. If not, just head to my channel and that video will be up there. Otherwise, I hope we can all be like Yuda this week and ship a milli. Thanks again to everybody in the chat, to Yuda, to JM, and we will see you guys next time for Block Party and Bully the Sims. Good luck in week